Hi everyone, and welcome to Creative Chelsea. Today I'm excited to be sharing with you this fun Christmas card I created and shared on my Instagram account a couple weeks ago. I created this card for the Secret Santa Instagram hop that my friends in the Stampin' Up! Artisan team did together. I was secretly assigned Karen Hadler and chose this beautiful card as inspiration. You can check out her amazing creations on her Instagram account with the link below in the description. If you are new to my channel and want to see more of my videos, click on the subscribe button and then the bell for notifications. I would love to be your Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and help you with any of your paper crafting needs. To purchase any of the products you see me use today, please visit my online store and the link is below in the description. One of the elements that I loved about her card that I will be sharing with you today is this fun blended ombre background. And I used stamps to show the ombre background while she had a blended sections on her background. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so to begin, you're going to need your piece of cardstock, and this is the background piece that I'm going to be stamping on. And I'm using basic white cardstock, and it's cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And the stamp set that I'm using is the Jingle Jingle Jingle, and I want to use this Believe and then the outline of Believe. And I have already added the inside part to my clear block. And to get the ombre look, you're going to need to choose 3 ink colors in the same color family. So I've got Garden Green, Granny Apple Green, and then Soft Sea Foam. I'm going to begin with the darker color and then move up into the lighter colors. So start by inking up your stamp, and then you're going to stamp your first image on the bottom. And you can choose wherever to place it. I'm just going to start with it in the center. So nice, clear, crisp image. Then you're going to take and ink again. And this time you're going to choose where you're going to line it up. So what I did is I took the eye and I lined up my, let's see, my E on that eye. So it's going to look something like this. And you want to give a nice gap between your rows of letters. Okay, so this eye here kind of lines up there with the B as well. So then I give a space and I move over just a little bit and make another stamp because we want it to look like it's repeating. Whoops, I got a little too much ink there in the middle. And that's okay. That's going to be covered up by our other elements. So now I just know not to maybe add so much ink. Okay, so then I do the same thing. So I find my B and then I place the I. Do you see how that I sits above the B? So now I know to do it again. So I'm going to do 3 rows of Garden Green. You will also want to maybe do some at the bottom. And let's do another one over here. So my B sits underneath the I. And we just need a little bit on the bottom just to make it believable that it maybe was cut from a larger piece. Okay, so then you're going to clean your stamp, and I've opened up my next color, which is the Granny Apple Green. I'm going to ink that up, and then you're just going to continue that process. Find your B, so right here, place your I over the B and stamp, and then give it some space and stamp again. And we're going to do 2 rows of this. Okay. Then clean your stamp, and this one is the Soft Sea Foam color. So it's going to be very light. And then my B again, place the I, and then a space. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. So now I have the outline, and I'm going to start, and this time I'm going to go from light to dark. Okay, so that's all the soft seafoam. Now I'm going to move to Granny Apple Green, and because I'm working from light to dark, I don't really need to clean my stamp each time. And I'm just going to line up the outline the best I can over the words and stamp it. All right, there we go. So next we're going to add some distressing and a little bit of color on the background. So we're working on basic white, and I want it to have a little bit more of that ombre feel. So I'm going to use my blending brush. Now I don't clean my blending brushes. I just have one that I use for green, one that I use for blue, one that I use for red. And so I'm just going to start off to see how dark that ink is. And I really don't have a ton of ink. So I'm just going to begin just with whatever ink is left in my brush. Just going to start adding a little bit of color to the background here. And really there isn't a lot left on there. So now I can go, and I'm going to start with my lightest color. So I've got my soft seafoam. Just pick up a little bit of color and add that over the soft seafoam area on my card. And again, we're not really trying to get a lot of color here because we want to see that stamp. I'm just adding color to the white cardstock in the back. Next, I can add just a little bit of color with my Granny Apple Green. Again, keep it really light. We don't want to compete with those stamped words. Blend it up and down just a little bit so it's nice and smooth from one color to the next. And then last, we've got the garden green. Again, you've got to be really careful with these darker colors that you don't add too much ink to that background. Okay. So not sure if you can even tell, but there is a very light green ombre on the background of this card. So because we are distressing this card, I do want to add just a little bit of brown. I've got early espresso here. I want to make sure I don't have a lot of ink at all, and just kind of tap it around the edges just to give it a little distressed look. You just want to be careful that it's not too much. Make sure it's very light. Okay. Can you tell that there's a little bit of darker color along those edges? And we'll come back and use this some more. Another thing that helps give it a distressed look is some splattering. And so I've got the Early Espresso Stampin' Write marker, and on the brush side, you just take your tip and put it inside the cap like this, and then you flick it out. And it just adds a very nice splattered, thin, small splattered dots that I just love that look. All right, so our background for our card is now all done, and we can move to the main focal point. So the candy cane images that I'm using come from the Sweet Candy Cane stamp set. It comes with 2 candy canes. They're slightly different, and then they also go in the opposite direction. And then I've got a little floral fauna element with this branch and leaves. The candy canes I'm going to stamp in Sweet Sorbet, and I'm going to keep them pretty plain. I just want them to really pop off of this fun background. So I don't want to do too much to them. So I'm just going to stamp that candy cane on some basic white cardstock. And then I've got the other one just on the other side of that clear block. Let's see, if I rotate this, or I'll just stamp it over here. Okay, so 2 candy canes just on some scratch paper. And then I'm going to stamp that little leaf in balmy blue. And I just want to tap it really slightly onto that ink pad so that I get the nice, distinctive stamp look. There are a lot of ways to get that image to look good. And one way is just to add a very light amount of ink. So if you just lightly tap it on your ink pad, it's going to stamp really nicely. So next I'm going to use the coordinating candy cane dies, and I'm going to go ahead and cut these out with my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And now I am ready to do a little distressing on those pieces as well. So the candy canes, I've got my red blending brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and just add a little bit of distressing to those. Let's see, it looks like I need just a little bit more ink color. So I'm just going to tap my brush on the ink pad and then make sure to blend off as much of that color as you can so that we just have a very light red going onto that candy cane. Again, we don't want to take away from that beautiful stamped image. You can also kind of rub it against the edges if you want to accentuate those edges too. So those are ready. And then we're going to do the same thing with the leaves, but instead of using balmy blue, I am going to use the early espresso again. So we want to keep that really light. I know I've just added a little bit of ink already to that brush. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of blending to that leaf. Whoops. And that's just going to add a little bit of that distressed look to those leaves. Can you see that? It's super light. You can see it in person really well. Next, our last thing we need to stamp is the greeting. And I wanted to use something that would tie with the believe. And so in that same Jingle 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 stamp set, it says believe in the magic. And so I'm kind of flip-flopping the greeting a little bit. And so I'm going to put in the magic as the main greeting, and then the background says believe. So it's going to be like opposite, in the magic, believe, which I think is kind of a fun thing to do. So I've got that on my clear block, inking it with some of that dark early espresso brown and stamping it on a strip that is 1/2 inch by 3 inches. And then we're, of course, going to distress it. So a little bit of ink, and then along the edges, just add a little distressing, just to tone down that bright white. And then if you want, you can take your bone folder and just distress that edge just a little bit in the corner. This just kind of roughens up that piece. Okay, and then you can fold down a corner or two. This one wants to be folded a little bit, so we'll do those two. Okay, so just rough it up a little bit. If you need to add a little more distressing, you can, just in a couple spots. There we go. I'm liking that. The very last thing is this fun vellum label in the back. So I've already cut that out. I cut out the label using the largest of the seasonal label dies. I just love those shapes. They're just very classic and perfect for Christmas cards especially. So my vellum is curling a little bit. I'm not sure if you can see that. And the reason for that is because I've added a little bit of glimmer. Do you see a little bit of that shimmering happening on the vellum? So when vellum gets wet or heated, it will kind of tend to warp. So if you don't want a warped piece of vellum, then probably don't do this step. But I've got my Wink of Stella. I'm pretty sure there's still something inside there, hopefully. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of shimmer to my vellum. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And it just really needs to be around the edges. I'm wondering if I'm almost out. Let's see, there's a little bit of a shimmer there. Not a lot, but that's okay. And it's kind of keeping it from warping too much. So now we've got all our elements. We're ready to add them to our card base. So I've got a card base of Crumb Cake. It's just your regular size, which is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored at 4.25 inches. And we're going to add our background piece right to the center of that card base. And if you want, you can put it down with some dimensionals, or you can just use regular adhesive. Totally up to you. There should be a little border around your background piece. All right, so I pulled out my silicone craft sheet so that you can see where I'm placing these elements, and I've also added dimensionals underneath everything. So let's begin. I'm going to go with my left candy cane. You see how it's coming off to the left, and I'm going to add this. Let's make sure I've got my glimmer side up. I think I do. I'm going to add this to the top left of that label, kind of coming off just slightly, and then doing the right one down a little lower and overlapping near the bottom. So that bottom of the two of them do come together in the center of that label. Okay, so then next I'm going to add my greeting. So I did add 2 dimensionals on the back of that on each side, and I just need to add a little bit of adhesive in the center, and that's going to hold my bow down. So for my bow, I wanted to use some of this baker's twine, and this comes from the basic baker's twine pack. It's the Crumb Cake color. And I want it to go from the left to the right. So when I flip it, that's going to be opposite of what I just said. So it's going to come up and then come down and loop it around my finger. It's very curly. Let's see if I can get it to kind of work with it instead of working against it. And I didn't cut a piece like a certain length. I'm just kind of working off of the spool here. And then once I have something that I like, I can take a pair of paper snips or some ribbon scissors and cut it. And then I'm going to add that to the center of the candy canes, a little lower than center on the vellum piece. So we're going to get something that looks like that. We're very close to being done. We just need to tuck in some of these little leaves. I've got one that I want to kind of peek in behind that left candy cane. And then I have one that I want to tuck in near the front. I just put it behind the twine. So something like that. And then we, of course, have one down near the bottom. I think I might bring it in just a little bit more. All right, so you'll end up with something that looks like this. And the nice thing about making this element off of your card is we can now flip it over and add some dimensionals to the back. All right, so I've added those dimensionals. And if you don't want to add that extra dimension, you could just add this to your card straight on. And then you just go ahead and add it to the center of your card. And you'll see here that I have masked, do you remember that bee that we had a little too much ink on? We kind of just hide it right there, but underneath all of these little details. If by chance we could still see it, you could add some embellishments or another, stamp or something to hide that element. I love that about paper crafting, is that you can usually hide a lot of those little mistakes that you might make. So the last thing I want to do is to add some embellishments, and I've got the brushed metallic adhesive backed dots, and I'm going to use this darker kind of brass looking these dots here. And I'm going to grab, if I can, I misplaced my take a pic tool, so of course I need to find that, but I'm going to add this, if it lets me, to my card. A small one up here at the top, and then maybe a large one near it, and then either another large or small one down at the bottom. Of course, you can add as many as you want to. And that card is all done. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me create this fun Christmas card, along with learning how to stamp an ombre background. If you are interested in getting written instructions or seeing close-up images of this card, you can visit my blog, creativechelsea.com. Thanks so much for watching. Have a creative day. Bye.